Pasuk Chof, Pasuk Aleph. Perak Chof, Pasuk Aleph. Vayavog b'nei Yisrael kol ha'edo midbar tzin b'chodesh harishon. The whole Edo, the whole congregation came to Midbar Sin in the month of Nisan. Vayeshev ha'om b'kodesh. And whenever the Torah uses the term om, it's the people, means the ordinary folk. V'tomasham Miriam v'tikov. Miriam passed away there, and she was buried there. So over here, there's the famous Chazal, v'tomasham Miriam. First, l'kol Edu, who are these people? Edu shlema shvar mesu, mesi amidbar, ve'edu pishu l'chaim. All those who were decreed to pass away over that 40-year period, they all died. This is the new generation. So the ones who complain now when there's no water, it's the new generation. These are the ones who are not exposed to the idolatry of Egypt. It's 40 years later. But some of them may have been because they're the older ones. They come and they complain, and it says Miriam passed away. So Rashi cites Chazal. What's V'tomasham Miriam? Lo medischo parshas Mises Miriam parshas Paraduma. What does the Torah juxtapose? The passing of Miriam to the portion of Paraduma. Lo maloch ma korbanos mechaprin, just as korbanos atone. Af Mises tzadikim mechaperes. The passing of tzadikim also atones. That's the juxtaposition. So over here, if you look in the Baal Turim explains the gematria of mechaper is paraduma. Paraduma and mechaper are the same numerical value. Paraduma and mechaper, same numerical value. Then he says shom, when it says vatoma shom Miriam, the gematria of shom is mechaper. So we find the juxtaposition teaches us that what? That just as paraduma is mechaper, Mises tzadikim is mechaper. The gematria of paraduma is mechaper, numerically, and the word shom is mechaper, is gematria of mechaper. There's a midrash that tells us, we find that there's no mention of a hesped when Miriam passes away. When Aaron passes away, it says not only did the men eulogize him, even the women cried for him. When Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, the men mourned his passing. Miriam, there's no mention. So Chazal tell us that Miriam was not eulogized. She passed away, she was buried. That was the end of the story. And there's a little bit of a claim against Klal Yisrael. The Klal Yoker explains that Rashi says, take a look in Beis, V'lo mayim lo edo. The moment she passed away, the water ceased to be. The wellspring that traveled with us for 40 years, the moment Miriam passes away, it ceases to be. So Rashi says, Mikan shekol arboim shana hoyu lehem haber b'schus Miriam. From here we see that the wellspring that flowed, traveled with them for 40 years, that was the merit of Miriam. Klal Yisrael did not know that. They did not appreciate that. When did they appreciate who Miriam was? When she passed away, because the moment she passed away, the water ceased. So the obvious question is, we have Moshe, we have Aaron, why did the water stop? The answer is, and then they realized how special Miriam was. It was only due to her passing. That's the reason why it ceased. So that is a reflection on why Klal Yisrael did not eulogize her. Since they did not appreciate who she was, could you imagine a woman like Miriam Hanaviah, the one who sang song at Kriyas Yamsuf with the women? She's the one who stood by when Moshe was put into the Nile. And she went and informed the daughter of Paro, found her if she needs a nursemaid. And she was involved in this. She is not appreciated. And the Gemara says in Tainus that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Klal Yisrael 3 Parnosim Tovim. We had 3 exceptional leaders. Moshe, Aaron, Miriam. Miriam is put on the same level as Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam as leadership. And yet, they did not appreciate who she was. I mean, they knew she was a tzaddik and she was this, but to make national mourning that every Jew should feel the pain and the loss, that wasn't the reality. How was that revealed? The moment she passes away, the water ceases. Now we understand how special she was. But you imagine, she was buried immediately without any special hespedim, without any special eulogies. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu causes the water to cease. It was really a punishment. So now, we say, the juxtaposition teaches us, Ma pora aduma mechaperes, af bis tzadikim mechaper. Now, why is the death of a tzaddik, why is that mechaper? So the way it's cited, over here there's a Kli Yakar, but others say it, that a person has to appreciate when a tzaddik passes away, a person feels the void and he picks up the slack. At least HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes the tzaddik to quell the prosecution against Klal Yisrael. This prosecution, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes the tzaddik, and that silences the prosecution. But if the person who's the beneficiary of this doesn't even feel the loss, the Orach Chaim Kodesh writes in one location, not only is it not a benefit, it's a claim against them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I took a tzaddik for you to appreciate who he was, and that's the reason why it silences the prosecution. And you're beneficiary of that, and you don't even appreciate who he is to be able to become better. And it's as if nothing happened. So not only does the Midas Adin is not silence, the attribute of justice is intensified. That's the Orach Chaim HaKodesh, not here, elsewhere. So therefore, you have to appreciate the loss, the void that comes about because the tzaddik's no longer here, and feel the pain. Here they didn't feel the pain. You don't feel the pain, therefore, there is no water. The water doesn't continue in her schus. So let's understand. The Gemara tells us that the Mon was b'schus Moshe, the Ani HaKavod was b'schus Aaron, and the wellspring was b'schus Miriam. So it seems, if you read the Gemara simply, so the schus is only there as long as you're alive. The moment she passes away, her schus is no longer there. But it seems to be, if not for this failing, her schus would have carried on. But if she's no longer there, it's only because they failed. So the way I understand it is, when she's there, it's in her merit. When she passes away, if her passing impacts on the people and they're inspired, and because of that inspiration, they advance themselves, so therefore her schus is continuing. Because she is that model who's actually causing them to ascend or to maintain a more special level. So therefore that's her schus. Her schus continues even after she passes. Therefore, the water would have continued. But because they were unaffected by this, so therefore she wasn't that special role model. If that's the case, as long as she's alive, her schus is there. The moment she passes, it's over. Okay, now, it's mechaper. It says, Vatomish Shom Miriam. Shom, the gematria, is mechaper. Paraduma is what? Is the same gematria, mechaper. That's how we associate one with the other. One's the equivalent of the other. Paraduma is kapora, and this is kapora. Now, paraduma alleviates what? The contamination of the dead. It frees the person of the contamination of the dead. Chazal tells us, Machlok Shishonim, when it says tzaddikim don't contaminate. They don't contaminate. Even their remains don't contaminate. So if you hold like that, Shom is kapora to tell us, do you know who she is? Vatikova Shom Miriam. When did they come to the realization of what kind of tzaddik she was? How divine righteous she was? When it was Shom, there. There, when the water ceased, then they began appreciating who she was after fact. And that's why it ceased. When it ceased, that was the eye-opener, who she was. So then they understood her remains are not like other people's remains. Other Jews' remains contaminate. Her remains don't contaminate. Or, even if you're of the opinion, as I said, it's an argument among the Rishonim, that even tzaddikim are metame, because of the chet of Adam Rishon, but the Gemara tells us we had that tzaddikim b'misoson krun chayim. A tzaddik, even if he passes away, his classification is chayim. So Shom is mechaper. If you appreciate what level of tzaddik she was, that even though she's no longer here, and this it says explicitly, but the kover Shom Miriam, only her remains were buried. The physicality ceased to be, that's there. But anything other than that, she continues to live. It's the equivalent she's alive. So therefore, it's only Shum. So the Shum revealed who she was, that her demise is only purely limited to the physical, but in terms of a spiritual, that's eternal. She lives on.